The hit landed clean. Nobody in the Osaka International Martial Arts Center expected that. Not the 4,000 people in the seats, not the federation officials at the scorer's table, not the championship referee who was standing 6 feet away and still couldn't fully account for how it happened in the moment of the happening. 1 second, Bruce Lee was standing in the center of the competition platform, receiving what should have been a routine award presentation, and the next second, the woman across from him had closed distance faster than the distance should have allowed, and her right palm strike had connected with his left shoulder, hard enough that the sound of it reached the third row. Bruce moved back half a step. The Osaka hall went completely silent, and then, in the 4 seconds that followed, something happened that 3 separate martial arts instructors sitting in the front rows would spend the next 30 years trying to describe accurately, and never quite managed to. Let's go back 20 minutes, because the hit didn't come from nowhere, and understanding how it landed is the only way to understand what came after it. The Osaka International Martial Arts Center on a Saturday championship night in April 1972 carries a specific atmosphere that is different from most large sporting venues. The crowd is not there for entertainment in the passive sense. These are people who train, who have trained for years, who come to championship events the way serious musicians go to concerts, to hear something they understand deeply performed at the highest level it can be performed at. 4,000 of them. Every seat full. The kind of crowd that produces real applause for genuine technique and real silence for real drama, neither of which can be faked with this audience. The championship that evening was the All Japan Women's Karate Open, which despite its name, drew serious competitors from across Asia and had in its 6 years of existence established a reputation for the quality of its final brackets. The Women's Open division produced consistently excellent competition, and tonight was no exception. The woman who won the championship that night had come through 4 matches in the course of the evening and had made each of them look different from the others, which was its own kind of excellence. Not the same solution applied 4 times, 4 different problems read and answered specifically. Her name was Aiko Yamashta. She was 28 years old, born in Kobe, training in Goju Ryu Karate since she was 11. 17 years of practice that had produced something the Japanese karate community discussed, in the specific way they discussed things that had stopped surprising them because the thing was always the same. 47 wins, 0 losses. She had never lost a competitive match, at any level, at any age, against any opponent. 47 times she had stepped onto a competition mat, and 47 times she had stepped off it having won. This was not a record built on favorable brackets or soft competition. She had won against serious opponents in serious settings, and the wins had been documented, and the community that took documentation seriously confirmed every one of them. She was 5'6" and 155 pounds, and what made her formidable was not any single quality, but the specific combination of several: excellent timing, genuine power for her size, and an ability to read opponents that the coaches who had worked with her described consistently as the thing that made everything else possible. She saw things coming before they arrived. Her final tonight was against a fighter from Fukuoka with her own significant record. The Fukuoka fighter made the final difficult in a way that the crowd appreciated, and the final lasted 4 minutes before Aiko won it, on points in a way that left no ambiguity. The crowd gave her what she had earned. 4,000 serious practitioners giving genuine appreciation to a genuine achievement. Then the Federation chairman took the microphone and said something that the front sections of the crowd received first, and that moved through the building in the specific wave of recognition that always preceded Bruce Lee's name reaching a full room. He said that for the trophy presentation tonight, the Federation had arranged a special guest. He said he was honored to introduce someone whose contribution to the international visibility of martial arts had been significant, and whose presence at tonight's championship honored the event and the discipline. He said Bruce Lee's name. 4,000 people made the sound of 4,000 people who have just been given something they wanted, the genuine sound, not the polite sound. Bruce walked from the front row, where he had been sitting since the card started, received the championship trophy from the Federation chairman, and crossed the platform toward the center where Aiko was standing. He stopped at the appropriate distance. He brought his hands together and bowed. Aiko looked at him. She did not bow back. The 4,000 people in the building registered the refused bow, in the way Japanese martial arts communities register refused bows, which is to say, completely and immediately, and with the specific weight that comes from understanding the precise meaning of what just happened. The Federation chairman shifted. The championship referee looked at Aiko and then at Bruce. Her coaches, positioned at the platform's edge, exchanged a look. Aiko took the announcement microphone before anyone moved toward her. She said, in Japanese, "I want to say something." She said it in English too, clearly, because she had prepared this and wanted it understood without waiting for translation. She said, "I have trained for 17 years. I have won 47 competitive matches without a single loss. I have given this discipline everything I have, every day, without exception. Tonight I won the championship of this event, in front of everyone here." She paused. She said, "The organization presenting my trophy chose a Hollywood film actor to present it. Someone who has built a career performing martial arts for cameras. Someone who has made significant money from the image of what serious practitioners build through years of actual work." She looked at Bruce directly. "Your films are very successful, but success in film and genuine mastery of a martial discipline are different things. I have not spent 17 years to stand here and receive my trophy from someone whose relationship to this discipline is primarily commercial." She said, "I will not bow to a film performance, and I will not accept this trophy from you. Subscribe right now." Because what Bruce says next, and what happens 30 seconds after he says it, is the moment that gives this video its title. 4,000 people were very still. Bruce stood on the platform holding the trophy. He looked at Aiko with the quality of attention that was his most consistent feature in any context, complete and patient, and reading what was actually in front of him rather than what the surface of it presented. He said, "May I respond?" She gestured toward the microphone. The gesture said yes in a tone that said, "Go ahead and show me it's worth responding to." He said, "I started training when I was 13. I studied under Ip Man. I have spent the last 19 years developing and teaching a martial arts system that I call Jeet Kune Do, and I currently have students across 2 countries who train in it seriously, every day. What you see in my films is real technique. The camera shows it, it does not create it." He paused. "I am a martial artist who has also made films. The order of those 2 things matters. It has always mattered." Aiko said, "That's what every performer says." Bruce said, "And what every genuine practitioner says." The claim sounds identical either way. The only way to tell the difference is to test it. She said, "Then let's test it." The platform erupted, not from violence, from 4,000 people understanding simultaneously what was being proposed and producing the sound that understanding generates when it arrives all at once. The Federation chairman was moving. 2 officials were on their feet. Aiko's head coach had come through the platform ropes. Bruce said, to all of them, "It's all right." The chairman said, "Mr. Lee, this is not." Bruce said, "She asked a genuine question. It deserves a genuine answer." He set the trophy down at the platform's edge, carefully, upright. He looked at Aiko. He said, "Your terms." She said, "Karate competition rules, standard scoring, your techniques against mine. The championship referee calls it." Bruce said, "Agreed." The chairman looked at 4,000 people who were not going anywhere and made the specific decision that event organizers make when situations have moved beyond the reach of their decisions, which was to make it as safe as possible and then let it be what it was going to be. The referee established terms. Both competitors acknowledged. The referee stepped back. They found their positions. Aiko in her Goju Ryu stance, 17 years of practice, expressed in how she carried her weight and her hands and her attention. Everything precise and specific and built from daily work over a long time. Bruce standing the way Bruce stood, the non-stance that was a stance, the balanced readiness that looked like nothing particular and was something very specific. The referee indicated they could begin. What happened in the next 3 seconds is what the rest of this story is about. Aiko moved first. She came forward with a front kick, fast and technically correct, aimed at reading Bruce's movement pattern from his first response. Bruce's body shifted. Not much. The kick passed through the space his center had been occupying, and his right hand came up and touched her extending shin as it passed. A point contact, brief and specific. The referee called a point. Aiko recovered and came back immediately with a reverse punch. No hesitation. The speed of someone who has thrown this technique 10,000 times. The reverse punch was thrown with the full rotation that Goju Ryu built into it, carrying genuine power. Bruce slipped it to his left. The punch passed beside his face. His left hand came forward and touched her extended shoulder. Second point. The platform had gone from 4,000 people making considerable noise to 4,000 people making very little. Not because nothing was happening, because what was happening required full attention to follow. Aiko reset. She was not rattled. She was too experienced to be rattled. She was incorporating. The 2 exchanges had given her information, and she was using it to change her approach, which was what serious competitors did. She came with a combination. Jab to cross to front kick, 3 connected elements, each one setting up the next. And then she did something that nobody else in this story had done, and that the front rows would still be talking about afterward. She varied the timing between the jab and the cross by exactly half a second, a deliberate break in the rhythm that was designed to make the cross arrive when the defensive response to the jab was still completing. It was excellent technique, genuinely excellent, the kind that took years to build because it required understanding not just how to throw, but how opponents responded and how to use that response. The jab arrived, and Bruce moved to slip it. The cross arrived half a second later than the usual combination timing, which meant it arrived while Bruce's slipping motion was still in progress, while his weight was slightly committed to the direction of the slip. It landed, right palm strike, Bruce's left shoulder, hard enough for the sound to carry to the third row. Bruce moved back half a step. The Osaka hall went completely silent, 4,000 serious martial arts practitioners watching one of the most famous fighters in the world get hit cleanly and move back half a step. And then Bruce smiled. Not performed, not managing how it looked. The genuine small smile of someone who has just received specific and valuable information. He looked at Aiko. He said, "That was real." She looked at him. Her expression had moved from the focused intensity of competition into something more complicated. A serious practitioner, recognizing that the acknowledgement she had just received meant something specific. She said, "Yes." "Look," he said, "the half-second break in the combination. You built that specifically." She said, "Yes." He said, "It's the best technique I've faced in a long time." She looked at him for a moment. Then she came again. This time, he was ready for the timing variation. He had felt it once and filed it, and now he knew what to look for. The jab arrived and he moved for it, and when the cross came half a second later, he had already accounted for the break, already positioned for the timing she was going to use. His left hand redirected the cross at the forearm, and from that position, his right palm found her sternum, and he stepped forward and guided her backward with her own momentum, and she sat down. Not hard, not violently. She sat down, because the geometry of the situation resolved in that direction. She was on her feet in 2 seconds. She was on her feet with the controlled urgency of someone who has never sat down on a competition mat before and is not processing it the way she expected to process new experiences. She came again. He moved, and she found nothing, and came again, and he moved, and she found nothing, and the pattern established itself with a quality that the front rows, serious practitioners who understood what they were watching, began to recognize as something they had not seen before. Not the evasion of someone retreating, but the constant repositioning of someone who was always somewhere other than where the attack expected him. She tried the timing variation again. He read the hip loading that preceded the jab and was already adjusting for the cross when the jab hadn't fully arrived yet. His left hand found her lead wrist as the cross came and redirected it, and she stumbled past him, and his right hand touched the back of her shoulder. She turned, and he was already somewhere else. The crowd had been building towards something that had not yet arrived and was now very close. Aiko stopped. She stood in the center of the platform and looked at Bruce, who was standing 8 feet away, with his hands at his sides and his breathing not significantly altered from when the exchange began. She said, "I can't find you." He said, "No." She said, "I vary the timing, and you still read it." He said, "The hip loads the same way, regardless of the timing variation. The variation is in the arm. The hip preparation is consistent." She looked at her own hip. She said, "I've trained for 17 years. He said, "The hip loading is built that deep. It's not a flaw. It's where the power comes from. It's just also where the information is." She was quiet for a moment. She came again, and he moved, and she came again. And he moved, and each time the exchange produced the same result, her technique finding nothing and his hand finding her at a point of contact that communicated clearly what was available from that position. She went down 3 more times. Each time she got up immediately. Each time she came back with the controlled purpose of someone who was not accepting the result they were getting. Aiko came off the platform and went after him from behind, like this video right now. The next to 60 seconds are the most dramatic 60 seconds this platform has ever seen. Bruce had started moving toward the platform's edge when Aiko came off it after him. Not through the steps, off it, dropping down from the platform surface with the controlled urgency of someone who has decided the exchange is not finished, regardless of what the referee has called. Her coaches reached for her. She went around them. The security staff at the platform corners were in motion. She reached Bruce before any of them reached her, and her hand closed on his shoulder from behind and pulled. He turned with the pull rather than against it, and as he turned, his right forearm intercepted her reaching arm at the elbow, and the turn continued, and she found herself in a position her training had not prepared her for, because the turn had converted her pull into a direction her balance couldn't follow. She went down on the platform floor. She came up immediately. The crowd was on its feet, not cheering in any simple sense. The sound of 4,000 people who have been watching something remarkable and are now watching it become something else, something more charged and more uncertain. She came at him again. He redirected her again. She went down again. Her head coach had come through the platform ropes now and was moving toward her. The Federation chairman was speaking into the announcement microphone about competition rules and safety protocols. 2 officials had formed a loose perimeter. She went down a third time and came up a third time, and the third time Bruce stepped back and put both hands up, not in fighting position, in the position of someone indicating that they are done, that this is finished, that there is nothing left to prove. He looked at her and said, "It's enough." She said, "It's not enough." He said, "For me it is." Her coach reached her then and took her arm and said something urgent in her ear, and this time she let him hold her, not because she was done, but because something in what he said had found the part of her that was still the serious practitioner underneath the reaction, the part that understood that what was happening had moved past the point where continuing served anything she actually valued. She stood in the platform space with her coach beside her and the officials around her and 4,000 people watching, and she was breathing hard, and her expression was doing the sorting that serious people's expressions do after significant events. Bruce picked up the championship trophy from the platform edge. He crossed to her and held it out. She looked at it. She looked at him. She said, "You got hit." He said, "Yes." She said, "I hit you clean." He said, "You did." The timing variation was genuine. I hadn't seen that before. She said, "And you smiled." He said, "Because I learned something. That technique is real. You built it across 17 years, and it's real." She said, "And then you read it." He said, "The second time. The hip told me before the arm did." She was quiet. Then she said, "I've never been put down on a competition mat, not once in 47 matches." He said, "I know." She said, "I said things tonight." He said, "Yes." She said, "In front of everyone." He said, "Yes." She said something in Japanese to her coach. Her coach answered quietly. She looked at Bruce. She said, "I was wrong." She said it the way she said everything, directly and without cushioning it. Not performing the admission, making it. She looked at the 4,000 people in the Osaka hall who were watching her. She said, in Japanese, and then in English, "I made a statement tonight about the man standing next to me. I said he had no standing here. I said his martial arts was commercial rather than real." She paused. "I was wrong. He hit back harder than anything I said." She bowed. The full bow, given completely. Bruce returned it. 4,000 people in Osaka responded with the warmest sound of the evening. She took the trophy. Then Aiko's trainer came through the platform ropes. His name was Miyamoto, 62 years old, 20 years coaching Aiko, and 3 decades in karate before that. A serious man, a capable man, someone who had built a significant competitive career before his body stopped being able to do what his mind still understood completely. He came through the ropes, not toward Aiko, but toward Bruce. He was not threatening, but he was moving with the specific purpose of someone who has made a decision and is carrying it out. He stopped 3 feet from Bruce and said, in careful English, "What you did to her. The hip reading. Show me." Bruce looked at him. He said, "Right now?" Miyamoto said, "She trains tomorrow at 6 in the morning. I need to understand what I am correcting before I stand in front of her and try to correct it." He said, "I have been coaching her for 20 years. Nobody has ever found that. I have watched every match she has ever competed in. I have never seen what you just showed me." He said, "Please show me." Bruce looked at Aiko. She was still holding the trophy, watching this exchange with the focused attention that was simply how she processed things. Bruce said, "Come to the side of the platform." They went to the side of the platform, away from the center and the crowd, and the officials who were managing the ceremony's conclusion. Miyamoto stood in front of Bruce, and Bruce showed him, specifically and completely, walking him through the sequence of Aikiko's initiation from the earliest signal forward, showing him what the hip loading looked like and when it appeared in the sequence and what it communicated. Miyamoto watched. He asked 2 questions. Bruce answered both. Miyamoto said, "I have watched her train every day for 20 years, and I have never seen that." Bruce said, "Most coaches are watching the technique. The information is in what precedes it." Miyamoto said, "How do I help her address it?" Bruce said, "She needs to start the initiation from a different place. The hip loading is producing the tell. The correction has to start at the weight transfer that loads the hip, not at the hip itself." Miyamoto said, "That's months." Bruce said, "Yes, her technique will be worse before it's better." Miyamoto nodded. He was not hearing discouragement. He was making notes in his head about what the next 6 months of training had to contain. He said, "Thank you." He said it simply. The way people say things they mean completely. He went back to his fighter. Bruce could see them talking on the platform, Miyamoto speaking quietly, and Aiko listening with the complete focused attention she brought to everything. The evening concluded. The crowd filed out into the Osaka night. The officials wrapped the ceremony. The platform was cleared. In the corridor outside the competition area, Aiko found Bruce. She had changed out of her competition clothes. She was carrying the championship trophy under one arm. She said, "The hip loading, the weight transfer that precedes it. Miyamoto told me what you said." He said, "It's built deep, 17 years deep," she said. He said, "Months." He said, "At minimum." She said, "My technique will be worse." He said, "Yes, before it's better." She said, "I will do the months." He said, "I know." She said, "I came out here to ask you something." He said, "Ask." She said, "When I hit you, the shoulder strike, you moved back half a step." He said, "Yes." She said, "And you smiled." He said, "Yes." She said, "Why?" He said, "Because nobody had done that to me in a long time. The timing variation you built was something I hadn't seen. That's worth smiling at. That's worth being grateful for." She looked at him. She said, "Most people would not be grateful for being hit." He said, "Most people aren't looking for the thing the hit contains. I'm always looking for that." She was quiet for a moment. She said, "What did it contain?" He said, "It contained the information that you had built a timing variation that was sophisticated enough to find a gap in my reading. That's a real thing. It deserved acknowledgement." She said, "And then you read it." He said, "The second time." "Yes," she said, "because the hip was consistent." He said, "Yes." She said, "You smiled when I hit you because you were already working out how to read the second version." He looked at her. He said, "Yes." She was quiet for another moment. She said, "I said you had no standing here." He said, "You said what you believed." She said, "I believed something incomplete." He said, "You updated it publicly. That's harder than what happened on the platform." She said, "No, it isn't." He said, "For most people it is." She thought about this. She said, "Come to our training hall before you leave Osaka. Miyamoto wants to show you something about our combination sequencing. He thinks you'll find it interesting." He said, "What time?" She said, 6. He said, "I'll be there." She bowed. He returned it. She walked toward the exit. He stood in the corridor for a moment. The building was emptying around him. The lights in the competition area were being switched off section by section, the building returning to the quiet it held between events. He thought about the timing variation, about the half-second break between the jab and the cross that had found the gap in his slip, about what it represented, 17 years of deliberate technical development producing something specifically designed to exploit the gap that appeared when an opponent committed to responding to the first technique. That was real work. That was the kind of thing that only appeared after a long time of serious practice. The ability to build something that subtle and that specific, and to deploy it under competition pressure when it was needed. He had gotten hit once. He had smiled. He had read it the second time. He was already thinking about how the principle of timing variation applied to his own system, and where he hadn't fully developed it, and what the work of developing it would require. He walked toward the exit. The hit was already filed. The principle was already active. The morning training would be different because of tonight. That was what serious exchanges produced, not victories, material for the next day's work. Subscribe if this story was worth your time. Tell me in the comments, what do you think Bruce was thinking in the half-step he moved back after getting hit? Not the smile, the half-step. I read every one.